Jabba the Hutt, the mafioso mollusk himself, pretty much owns the first third of episode 6. Even though he was present only in one movie and was killed off relatively quickly, Jabba's impact was such that he has appeared in the prequels and endured in popular culture as one of Star Wars' most recognizable characters. But just how much do you know the Star Wars villain with the booming laugh? I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture Star Wars, and here are 10 things you probably didn't know about Jabba the Hutt. Number 10. He was based on Sydney Greenstreet. The initial concept for Jabba was an icon of corruption and greed. His character, and later his appearance, were modelled on Sydney Greenstreet, especially the character of Caspar Gutman in The Maltese Falcon. His character of Signor Ferrari in Casablanca was also cited as an influence to the extent that some concepts of Jabba had him wearing a fez like the Casablanca character. Aw, just imagine Jabba with a little hat. That's very endearing. In any case, Gutman's combination of corpulence, deceitfulness, malevolence, and an appreciation for luxury are all apparent in Jabba's character. Other apparent inspirations include a late career Orson Welles, early depictions of the Michelin Man, good, the hooker puffing caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland, and from the animal kingdom, annelid worms, amphibians, and snakes. Jabba's just got them all. Number 9. He was operated by 7 people. Jabba was one of the most complicated puppets ever put to screen when Episode 6 was being filmed. Phil Tippett was in charge of Star Wars' many puppets and eventually won an Oscar for his work on the movie, where Jabba was one of his primary contributions. The enormous puppet contained 3 people, 2 to move the mouth and head and an arm each, and third, a little person, who also played an Ewok, to swish Jabba's tail around. Jabba's eyes were moved by another 2 puppeteers via radio remote control. A 6th crew member lay beneath the puppet using a set of bellows to make Jabba's sides heave in and out as he breathed. The final, no less essential member of Team Jabba was the crew member responsible for constantly smearing the puppet with glistening ooze to maintain the healthy oozing sheen essential to any self-respecting Hutt's appearance. Number 8. He cost $500,000. As befits one whose tastes ran to the luxurious, Jabba the Hutt was very, very expensive. The puppet's enormous size and plethora of moving parts cost upwards of $500,000, and that was back in 1983, when $500,000 was even more a bigger pot of money than it is today. That price included the state-of-the-art animatronics, the eyes, and the essential ability to smoke his hooker on camera. For comparison, the entire budget of the original Star Wars was $4 million. The puppet took 3 solid months to build and weighed 200 pounds. Even at such huge expense, it was delicate and the puppeteers had to be careful not to mangle Jabba's supple alien flesh as they gesticulated. The model making itself was helmed by a man called Stuart Freeborn, whose team had also built the Yoda puppet for The Empire Strikes Back. Jabba, though, was on a different level entirely, and is still probably the most expensive movie puppet ever created. Number 7. In Legends canon, he's even grosser. The mass of books, comics, video games, and God knows what else that existed outside the movies before Disney's takeover of Lucasfilm in 2012 has been quarantined as legends. So it's a sort of peculiarities don't get in the way of making new movies and TV shows. Which is weird because they keep taking so much stuff from there, but I digress. Just about every aspect of Star Wars is expanded upon somewhere in the Legends canon, with Jabba the Hutt's various hangers-on being no exception. One such example is Yana Dal Gargan, aka the 6-breasted dancer who graces Jabba's palace with her sultry moves. According to her expanded biography, Jabba took a liking to this particular dancer because of her resemblance to his mother. Goo. Of course, Yana has her own story to tell too, where she escapes from the palace, dances at Leia and Han's wedding, is spotted by a galactically famous designer, and becomes a renowned supermodel. We do love a good happy ending, don't we, folks? Number 6. He was in A New Hope, and had a Northern Irish accent. One of the most controversial changes made to A New Hope in the special edition, released in 1997, was the addition of a previously cut scene where Han Solo encountered Jabba. The gangster demanded the money that Han owed him, and Han gave his typically roguish checks in the mail answer. Jabba appeared in peculiarly flat CGI, the best 1997 could manage evidently, because in his cut appearance he had been played by a regular human. Specifically, an actor by the name of Declan Mulholland, whose distinctive Northern Irish accent graced the scene. While Lucas claimed he would have added a stop-motion character in Mulholland's place if the scene had been kept, Mulholland is fully made up and costumed in a dapper furry number, and his performance didn't seem like that of a simple stand-in. Whatever the real plans for the scene, Jabba's first appearance in the Star Wars universe was as a curious footnote in A New Hope. Number 5. He's one of the richest fictional characters. Each year, as you may be aware, Forbes magazine does a tongue-in-cheek list of the richest characters in fiction. Santa Claus traditionally topped the list until Forbes received negative feedback from readers claiming Santa Claus should be treated as real, but other fixtures on the list include Bruce Wayne, Tony Stark, and Scrooge McDuck. In 2008, Jabba the Hutt also made the Forbes cut as one of the 15 richest fictional characters with a worth of $8.4 billion, above Ebenezer Scrooge and below 1980s yuppie icon Gordon Gekko. His wealth stems from extortion, gunrunning, and the Kessel spice trade, along with his cozying up to the imperial government and cultivating a reputation for having anyone who crosses him ruthlessly murdered. His assets include his palace and the luxurious sail barge, the Katana. Alas, Jabba was taken off the list in 2009 on the grounds that he was dead. Kind of a weird technicality, given I'm sure Scrooge can't have made it that many years past Victoria's reign either, but hey ho, Forbes, I am not. Number 4. The secrets behind his language. The languages of Star Wars have stories all of their own, with many of them being recordings of earthly languages either sped up or played backwards. The language of the Jawas, for instance, was based on sound designer Ben Burtt's phonetic notes on Zulu words, re-recorded and altered. Most alien tongues in Star Wars aren't full languages like Tolkienian, Elvish, or Klingon, but use the sounds of different Earth languages to make them sound distinct and somewhat alien. Ben Burt based Jabba's language Huttese on the sounds of the Central Andean language Quechua. The puppeteers needed a script to read so they knew when to move Jabba's mouth, and so, during filming, one of the puppeteers said Jabba's lines in English. Jabba's eventual dubbed language, therefore, has the same number of syllables as the English translation, as Huttese needed to match up with the movement of the crime lord's mouth. Number 3. His original concepts looked very different. Like many of Star Wars' most outlandish characters, Jabba went through several iterations of concept and design before the filmmakers arrived at the corpulent slug, worm, amphibian thing of movie history. Some of the first concepts for Episode 6 included a much more agile, ape-like creature, as well as a chunky, four-armed humanoid in a Speedo. The earliest art of Jabba, though, is from well before Return of the Jedi, in the comic book adaptation of A New Hope released by Marvel Comics. Here, he's more of a much more standard humanoid with a weird head kind of alien, based on a tusked, bristly inhabitant of the Cantina scene. Jabba's concept art settled on a grotesquely bulbous monster, and a more recognizable Jabba quickly took shape. His hooker was always a part of his design, because even from the start, Jabba the Hutt was all about that vape life. But which concept is your favorite though? Let us know down in the comments below. Number 2. He's 600 years old. Hutts are extremely long-lived creatures, and the age of Jabba Desolate Tier, the big man's full name, is canonically over 600. This means he's lived through not only the events of the prequels and the original trilogy, but also several hundred years way beyond in the past. His convoluted Legends history sees him taking over his family's crime empire at a sprightly 80 years of age, tangling with fellow crime lords Prince Zizor and Cece From, and engaging in a ruthless turf war with a fellow Hutt named Gardula. He even allied with Darth Plagueis, the same Sith Lord who preceded Darth Sidious / Emperor Palpatine. Jabba's official canonical biography is much less convoluted, but still involves intrigue set during the Clone Wars, where he enlisted the aid of the Jedi in finding his kidnapped son, got mixed up with a half-robot Maul, and eventually became an ally of the Empire after some tense negotiations with one Darth Vader. In short, Jabba packed a lot into both versions of his multi-century life, although arguably nothing was quite as dramatic as the way it ended. And number 1. George Lucas didn't like the puppet. George Lucas, co-directing and co-writing Episode 6, was not impressed with the gargantuan puppet built to represent Jabba the Hutt. He was particularly unimpressed with how cumbersome it was, requiring hours of arduous heavy lifting for the crew to get it into position for different shots. If the early 1980s had given Lucas access to CGI, he would have undoubtedly used it for Jabba. As it is, there are 3 fully CGI versions of the Huttese crime boss in the Star Wars movies. One is the original Jabba, added to the formerly deleted scene in 1997. In 2004, this was replaced with a much more accurate and technically proficient version for the home media releases of the special edition. Sandwiched between these two is the version of a younger Jabba who presides over the pod race in The Phantom Menace, which obviously came out in 1999. Now, not to speak for everyone, but I think the majority of Star Wars fans prefer the majestic puppet we got in Episode 6 over the less convincing CGI monsters we got in the years since. At $500,000 though, you can understand why George wasn't so keen to make a new one.